Senator Cadell will now move to question time. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, over the last few days we've seen widespread media reports that Marcia Langton, who is leading the Yes campaign, has attacked fellow Australians who intend to vote no in the upcoming referendum. As reported in the Bunbury Herald and subsequently in the national media, Marcia Langton described their position as being base racism or sheer stupidity. Minister, will you join with me in condemning that type of attack and acknowledge that on October the 14th many Australians will vote no for good and sensible reasons?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Cash for the question. I'd make a few points. The first is that Marcia Langton is a respected academic who was appointed by, from memory, your government to work on the proposed Voice to Parliament. I would also make this point that everyone comes to this debate with their own experience, but I would encourage all of us to come to this conversation in a spirit of respect and empathy and to represent people's contributions faithfully. If the question is, do I agree with the accusation of racism? No, I don't. I think this is an important moment for the nation. And it's an important moment for the nation because our First Nations Australians have come to us and asked us to listen. And the request from First Nations Australians comes at the end of a long process, and I think it is incumbent upon all of us to engage open and honestly. Every Australian has a vote and every Australian is entitled to their own opinion. But people aren't entitled to their own facts. And the national conversation should be based on fact, not fear. And those of us in those.
Senator Cash.
People can look at this conversation right now and see which of us is behaving respectfully for different opinions, Senator Cash. We set the tone here in this chamber. We have a responsibility to engage honestly and to call out misinformation and dishonesty and division wherever we see it. I would hope this could be a moment of unity, and we owe it to those who have been involved in years of work, from those at the First Nations constitutional dialogues to the Uluru Statement from the Heart to the legislation we passed here in the chamber and the referendum itself. I'd urge fact, not fear, to be the basis of this discussion.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. Will you join me in acknowledging that many Australians who are considering voting no in the upcoming referendum, and that actually includes a large number of Labor voters, are doing so because they feel, on a good and principled basis, that the proposal divides Australia on the basis of race?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Wong.
Well, I would start by saying, every Australian gets a vote, and every Australian will come to this and make their own decision about how they want to vote in the upcoming referendum. And I and those of us on this side, and some even on that side, would urge Australians to listen to what is being proposed, to listen to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in what is a modest ask, and ask for a committee which will be legislated, including with the input of those opposite, to try and ensure we get better outcomes for our First Nations peoples. What I would say is that, again, it was disappointing to see there are some in this debate who are talking about running on fear. Running on fear. And I would say to Australians—
Order. Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
And, Minister, will you then join me in acknowledging that Australians who do vote no in the upcoming referendum are neither racist nor stupid, and in fact Australians who vote no will do so because they feel that that is in the best interests of our country? Will you join with me in acknowledging this simple fact?
Minister Wong.
I believe Australians are people of good heart, and I believe that Australians take their responsibility seriously. I have well, I will use my words, actually, and I will respect, as all of us should, that Australians will come to different views about this, and they're entitled to. All of us are entitled to. We all have a vote. What I would say is that the way in which we conduct this debate, I would urge, be a debate that is respectful, that recognises people's different experiences, that we all bring to this discussion a different life experience, would recognise that there are different views, and would also pause at least, and this is what I would ask of Australians, is to pause to listen to what is being asked.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Payman.
My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. It is just over 1 month before Australians head to the polls to vote in the referendum on Voice to Parliament. Can the Minister explain to the Senate how the Voice is an opportunity to bring Australians together and help achieve better outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people? And can the Minister outline why the government supports constitutional recognition through a Voice to Parliament?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Wong.
I thank Senator Payman for her question. I thank her for her genuine interest in closing the gap and for her determination to build a better future for all Australians. And on October 14, all of us, every Australian, will have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to bring our country together and to change it for the better, to vote for recognition and listening so we get better results. Constitutional recognition through a voice is the form of practical reconciliation that Indigenous Australians requested as part of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. It is supported by an overwhelming majority of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. The Voice will offer ideas and advice so governments can make better decisions to address the challenges facing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It is an advisory committee made up of representatives from across the country. It won't have the power to make or veto government's decisions. What it will do is improve outcomes in Indigenous health, housing, education and employment. Now,
Order.
Australians from all walks of
Senator
life
Cash.
are coming together, united in their support for a voice to the Parliament enshrined in the Constitution. Meanwhile, we have the No campaign. The No campaign who put forward many varying reasons for their opposition and their campaign. But what is noteworthy is that Mr Dutton has in fact promised not one but 2 referendums, another referendum on constitutional recognition, although I note his Shadow Minister for Indigenous Affairs has publicly stated she does not support it. So more politics, more political games, because Mr Dutton didn't do something when he had the chance and now someone else is trying to do something he wants to tear it down.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Thank you.
Sorry, Senator Payman, please resume your seat. Senator Nampijinka-Price.
Point of order, President. At no point have I ever suggested that I do not
Senator
support—
Nampijinka-Price, that's a debating point, not a point of order. Please resume your seat. Senator Nampijinka, I invite you to make whatever statements you want to outside of question time and other times. It is not a point of order. Please resume your seat. It is not. Senator Nampijinka-Price, I've asked you twice to resume your seat. Please resume your seat. Senator Nampijinka-Price, as the President, it's my authority to direct you to resume your seat. Resume your seat. Order. 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 Senators on my left and right. Senators on my left and right. Senator O'Neill, I'll remind you, as the President, it is my job to control order in this place, and that was very unhelpful. And I have Senator Wong on her feet.
On the point of orders, President, if I may, Senator Nampijinpa Price has raised an issue. If I have made an incorrect reflection, I'm always happy to withdraw it, and I would invite her to, at an appropriate time, make a contribution to the chamber. I believe that that was what was reported, and I represented that according to public reports. But if that is incorrect, of course, we will do you the courtesy of ensuring you have the opportunity later in proceedings to do that. If I may return, where are we at?
I'm calling Senator Payman. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Thank you. There have been a number of reports on respective campaigns on the upcoming referendum on the Voice to Parliament. Can the Minister please update the Senate on how those campaigns are being conducted as Australians prepare to vote on October 14?
Senator Wong.
Thank you. Well, it was quite disturbing, and I would hope that Senator Cash and others who are urging a higher tone in this debate might join with me in condemning this, because it was disturbing to read in yesterday's Sydney Morning Herald and Age that the No campaign has instructed volunteers to use fear and doubt rather than facts to trump the arguments used by the Yes camp. And I look forward to Senator Cash joining with me in condemning such an approach, which is not the approach that we should be taking to this discussion. I mean, this is nothing more than fear-mongering. Those will do and say anything if they think it will help them politically, spreading lies and sowing fear, even when it means standing in the way of a better future for Australians. You see, this is a political tactic that we have seen, regrettably, from some on the other side in so many ways. Certainly Mr Dutton has an approach. He builds himself up by tearing things down.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister, for the update. Can the Minister remind the Senate about efforts to achieve reform in Australia in the past? What lessons can we take from the history as we seek to make progress towards a better future for all Australians?
Senator Scarr. Senator Scarr, I'm calling you to order. Minister, please, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The facts are, we know from what the No campaign have told Australians, that they are prepared to exploit fear to put that political fight ahead of national progress. And you know, I say to those opposite, instead of interjecting, complaining about it, maybe you should do something about it. Surely, if you want this debate to be a decent debate, if you want this debate to be a debate that is worthy of the Australian people, then surely those opposite and Mr Dutton might use their leadership to ensure that we saw facts, not fear, as the basis of
Senator
the debate.
Rennick.
Now, we know, of course, that those opposites do like to resort to fear tactics. We remember words such as economic wasteland. We remember an assertion that secure jobs and better pay would leave supermarket shelves bare.
The time for answering has expired. Thank you. Senator McGrath.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Special Minister of State, Senator Farrell. Has the Albanese Labor government finalised new guidelines for the use of special-purpose aircraft? In what year were the guidelines that are currently applicable dated or first approved?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator McGrath for his question. Yes, I can provide some information in response to that question, Senator McGrath, and if further information is needed, then I will seek to get that information after question time. But the draft Special Purpose Aircraft Guidelines 2023 have been updated to reflect the security advice ratified by the Security Coordination Committee on the 1st of March 2023. In accordance with this advice, the draft guidelines will not be finalised until the transparency and accountability considerations are finalised. I'm answering directly answering your questions. So please listen. Until the guidelines are finalised, the government is authorising flights in accordance with the 2013 guidelines. The use of special purpose aircrafts are being reported, reflecting the security advice and the updated draft guidelines. As I said, if there's further information that I can provide, then I shall do that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. So what is the security classification of the guidelines for the use of special purpose aircraft? And if these documents are unclassified, will they be released publicly in accordance with orders of the Senate?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator McGrath for his first supplementary question. In respect of your first part of your question, the 2013 Special Purpose Aircraft Guidelines, as published, are classified as official. In respect of your second question, I will need to seek some advice from the Minister in respect of that question.
Senator McGrath, second supplementary.
Thank you. According to leaked Albanese government talking points repeated by the Minister for the Environment on Monday, the government is committed to providing SPA flight manifests to IPIA. However, a second leak of updated talking points removes any reference of providing manifests to IPIA. Is the government committed to providing the SPA manifest to IPIA or not? And why are the manifests not currently being provided to IPIA?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator McGrath for his second supplementary question. I'm advised that the Royal Australian Air Force stopped providing weekly manifests to IPIA on the 7th of December 2021. It's a matter of public record that the Leader of the Opposition, of course, was the Minister for Defence at that time. The Minister for Defence has directed his department to continue to work with IPIA for assurance and scrutiny of public expenses, including for special purpose aircraft. If there's, again, I repeat, if there's any further information I can provide you after question time, I'll come back and do that.
Thank you, Minister Farrell. Senator Waters.
Thanks very much, President. My question is to Minister Gallagher, representing the Minister for Health and Aged Care. The Universal Access to Reproductive Health Care Senate Inquiry Report made 36 recommendations to address barriers to sexual, maternity and reproductive health care in Australia, and it was tabled in May this year. The government response to those recommendations to the report was due on the 25th of August. We're almost 3 weeks beyond that due date, with no explanation for the government's delay. Women's health should be a priority, and women are sick of waiting for policy reform. When will the government release its response to this report?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Waters for the question, and it's an important one and an important report that the Senate inquiry handed down into access to sexual and reproductive health. And as Senator Waters outlined, the report did highlight a number of areas that need improvement so that women can access affordable, timely and appropriate care, including close to where they live. The government is currently working through recommendations outlined in the report, and we will table our response as soon as those are finalised. There are a large number of recommendations in the report, 36 in total, and the Minister for Health and his assistant ministers ensuring that we get the response right, working with our state and territory colleagues, consulting with the sector and across departments, and we will table our response as soon as it is finalised. But I would also say we have already invested significant funding and begun work on several of the recommendations in the report. Over 60% of the longer MBS consultations are used by women. That's those consultations that are over 20 minutes under Level C items and over 40 minutes under Level D items. We have committed over $99.1 million to introduce a new MBS item for consultations of 60 minutes or more to support more improved access and affordability for patients with chronic conditions and complex needs, including those with mental health conditions, family, domestic and sexual violence, chronic conditions, as well as reproductive health and matters like menopause. We've also committed $26.4 million over 4 years to extend support for research and data collection activities that support women and girls' health outcomes. And we welcomed the TGA's decision to remove a number of restrictions on health professionals who prescribe and dispense MS2-STEP.
Thank you, Minister Gallagher. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Women experiencing menopause struggle to get adequate treatment, but this has been exacerbated this year with the discontinuation of several brands of hormone replacement therapy transdermal patches. What will the government do to ensure that women have access to the necessary menopause treatments and that they are affordable?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. I will see if there's anything more I can come back to Senator Waters with on the specifics on that, but I would say Minister Carney has been leading the work on this from the House of Representatives, and I have seen a number of forums where she has attended and held sessions on, particularly on menopause and how to provide appropriate health services for women who are going through menopause, but not only menopause, on pelvic pain, endometriosis, a whole range of areas where we believe women's health and addressing women's health matters haven't been appropriately dealt with. So I'll see if there is anything further I can on the specifics of the treatments that you refer to, because I don't have any information about that. But making sure women going through menopause are able to access the appropriate health treatments is a priority for this government, and Minister Carney is doing incredible work in that area.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Women's pain is often minimised or not believed. 1.8 million women in Australia live with chronic pain. Pain Australia is calling for 10 subsidised allied health visits per year to achieve effective multidisciplinary pain management. What is the government going to do to ensure that women suffering from chronic pain can get and afford the health care that they need?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I do acknowledge the question from Senator Waters on women's health and the fact that there are barriers affecting women and their access to health care, and indeed when they're accessing health care, the way that those conditions are responded to, and there is a lot of evidence around bias in addressing women's health matters. So I acknowledge that and her long-standing interest in these matters. I would say, again, under the leadership of Minister Carney, there has been a women's health advisory group brought together, putting forward a women's health plan, and all of the matters that you've raised in your questions would be forming part of the discussions that have been held under that. Part of my job in ensuring that we are leading in terms of gender equality across the board also includes health, and I know that that has featured in some of the work that the Women's Economic Equality Task Force have been looking at as well. So there is a lot of work happening across government.
The time has expired. Senator Sheldon.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. In the middle of the pandemic, Qantas sacked 1,700 of their ground crew workers and outsourced their jobs. Could the Minister please update the Senate on the High Court's decision in the Qantas versus the Transport Workers Union case regarding these sackings handed down this morning?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Senator Watt. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Sheldon for this question. As I've said before, Senator Sheldon is one of a number of senators on this side of the chamber who has a long record of standing up for the Qantas workforce, a much longer record than the 2 weeks we've seen some spin-type attempts from the opposition. And it's very good news that the highest court in the land, and some of them are speaking up now. Always good to hear from you, the National Party, when things haven't gone your way. Today, the highest court in the land has sent a clear message to Qantas that how they've treated their workers has not been up to scratch, and in fact, it's illegal. And it sends a very clear message, not just to Qantas, but to large companies across Australia, that they need to treat their workforce with respect and not look for loopholes in the law to get around the system to undercut wages and avoid their obligations. And of course that's exactly what this government is trying to do with the legislation we're putting to the parliament at the moment. Close the loopholes. It's even in the name of the legislation. It's cases like Qantas that are why we want to get on with closing those loopholes. Qantas needs to remember that it has to have a responsibility not just to its shareholders but to its workers and its customers. This government, those on this side of the chamber, stood up to support the workers who had been illegally sacked in the public interest. But of course, what did we see from the previous government? Well, they spent taxpayer money to keep people in work during the pandemic without making it a requirement to keep people in work.
Senator
Most
McKenzie,
companies honoured that principle, but Qantas took the money and sacked their workforce anyway. Workers this morning can feel a sense of justification and redemption with the decision. I say to the Qantas workers, you did nothing wrong. Qantas broke the law and the previous government refused to stand with you. The company stood down their workforce, forced them to run down their leave balances so they could reduce the payout they would receive when they illegally sacked them, and they have been held to account today. That is a very good thing, and all parts of this chamber should listen.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
What did the previous government do to prevent illegal sackings while they were receiving millions of dollars of taxpayer-funded pandemic support?
Order. Order. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, Senator Sheldon, I could answer your question with one word, nothing, but I'll give you a slightly longer answer. If you were to only listen to the LNP now that they are in opposition, you would be forgiven for thinking that they might actually have grown a backbone and stood up for workers. But luckily, for the benefit of the Australian public, we kept the receipts from their time in office. When Qantas sacked and outsourced thousands of its workforce, despite receiving $2.7 billion in taxpayer support, including $900 million for JobKeeper, one coalition minister at the time said it was, quote, a commercial decision for Qantas, and they are entitled to make those decisions. Which coalition minister might that have been at the time? Senator Cash! You can always rely on Senator Cash to kick workers when they're down, and that's what she did when she was a minister in the former government. Then Industrial Relations Minister Christian Porter said it was a good model, and then Transport Minister Michael McCormack said, I know the decisions are in the best interest of their company going forward.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
Well, there you go. You've exposed a lot of it. What are the Albanese government doing to support workers and ensure they are protected?
Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Well, for starters, we intervene in court cases when workers' rights are on the line. We intervened in this court case and took a position that Qantas had done the wrong thing. What did we see from the coalition government when they were in power? When cases went to the High Court, they did sometimes intervene. They intervened to undermine agreed conditions in enterprise agreements. They intervened to cut the rights of casuals and also to cut the right of shift workers. In contrast, the Albanese government is determined to close the loopholes, and we look forward to certain groups who say they care for workers — hello Senator Hanson, hello Senator Roberts, hello Senator Pocock — voting with us to make sure that that stops.
To the chair.
The Albanese government is acting to close various loopholes, like criminalising wage theft, getting rid of this idea of forced permanent casual workers, and giving casual workers who are working like they're permanent a chance to convert to permanent employment. As I say, we look forward to all parties in this chamber who say they care about workers voting with us and getting on with it this year.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Hanson.
Thank you very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. The Productivity Commission's role is to help governments make better policy in the long term of the Australian community. The new Productivity Commissioner, Danielle Wood, has argued there's no justification for how little Australian retirees are taxed and has called for a debate on inheritance tax to address intergenerational inequity. Will the Albanese Labor government rule out imposing an inheritance tax?
Thank you, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong.
In relation to the last no, the government is not contemplating an inheritance tax. Second, speaking of fear and fact, I'll take the interjection from Senator Cash. And others on that side. It's just really extraordinary, isn't it? They come in here demanding discussion about facts, but we see yet again fear campaign. No, it is not government policy, nor are we proposing one. As the Treasurer, I understand, has said, obviously Ms Wood is a well-published economist. She's written and spoken about economic policy for many years. Obviously, the Treasurer and the government may not agree with everything she has said or published, but she is an economist of great note. And if I may say, we've not had a woman head the Productivity Commission before, and that of itself is a good thing to see a woman who is so well qualified come to head that body. I think Senator Gallagher yesterday gave some information to the chamber in relation to selection process. I again reiterate Ms Wood has said and written many things, as you would expect from someone in her position. Not all of them are ones the Treasurer might agree with, and they certainly don't represent government policy. But the point is that we have appointed someone to head the Productivity Commission who is deeply engaged in some of today's difficult economic questions, and that is a good thing to ensure that the government and the Australian people, as well as the Parliament, can have the benefit of the advice and views of the PC. Many governments will
Thank
obviously
you, Minister. The time for
not
answering
take up
has
everything.
expired. Senator Hanson, first supplementary.
Thank you. Just to make sure it's of your answer, Australians pay 40 to 45% tax on a new home build, and over their lives they are always paying land tax, capital gains tax, GST, stamp duty and countless other government fees and charges. Everything is taxed in this country. Does the Prime Minister support continuing to tax the families of hard-working Australians after they die with an inheritance tax?
Senator Hanson. Minister Gallagher.
I was just going to raise a question about whether the supplementary flows from the primary question.
Yes, I was just about to make that point. Senator Hanson, it's very difficult to see how your first supplementary is related to the primary question, but I can invite Minister Wong to answer the parts of it she wishes to. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Thank you to Senator Hanson for the supplementary. I would say first what I said again, what I said in my first answer, which is that an inheritance tax is not part of the government's agenda. In relation to the Productivity Commission, obviously that is an independent body. We respect its independence and we respect its contribution to the national discussion about economic issues. As an independent body, as an independent body, obviously, governments of the day won't always take the advice in its entirety of the PC, and that was the case under the previous government too.
Senator Hanson, second supplementary.
Thank you. Ms Wood has advocated for the exclusion of almost all the value of the family home for the aged pension asset test. Will the Albanese Labor government rule out removing all or part of the family home from the aged pension asset test?
Minister Wong.
Well, again, I'd say that Ms Wood wrote and spoke widely on economic and tax and fiscal policy prior to her appointment. She was entitled to do so. She's a well-respected economist. As head of the Productivity Commission, her position is one of independence. The government will make its own decisions about funding for various programs, including aged care. I would make the point, Senator Hanson, that this government has invested an enormous amount into aged care, including improving
Minister
the
Wong, please
position of the
resume your
workforce.
seat. Senator Hanson.
Relevant to the question, I never ever mentioned aged care in my question. It was about the removing all or part of the family home from the aged pension asset test.
Yes, and it was in relation to journal articles that Ms Wood had answered, and I believe the minister has been relevant to that. Minister, please continue.
I again say the government will make its own decisions about the appropriate model for funding of aged care, and the government is not adopting the position—
Oh, sorry, Senator Hanson. Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Hanson.
As I keep going back to my question, I never referred to aged care. If the minister could answer the question on inheritance tax with a definite, we're not looking at it. I'm asking for an answer of yes or no to my question.
Senator Hanson, you were referring to an article written by Senator Hanson. It's not for you to argue with me. I'm answering your point. Please resume your seat. Please resume your seat, Senator Hanson. You asked about the asset test in an article written by Ms Wood. The minister was being relevant. I'm happy to remind the minister of the question in the remaining 11 seconds. Minister Wong.
I simply say this, that the government will make its own decisions about funding models and about eligibility, as we have in previous budgets. Ms Wood.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cadell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, Senator Watt. I refer the Minister to comments made last week by the Minister for Transport, Catherine King, when she was asked a question by Sabra Lane on ABC Radio regarding how much the Qatar airport security incident weighed into her decision. She said, quote, "Well, it wasn't a factor in the decision." End quote. Minister Farrell also advised the chamber during question time last week that, and I quote, "I have just travelled through Doha Airport on my way back from a holiday a few weeks ago, and I personally don't see any risks." But the Transport Minister also said of the incident, "It wasn't the only factor, but it was one." The question is very simple. Was it a factor or not?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Senator Watt.
Thanks, President. Thanks, Senator Cadell. This is, these questions have been answered now for the best part of 2 weeks, so I'm not really sure what further light can be put on the question. I read the transcript from Minister King, and my recollection of it said that she said it was those incidents, those extremely more than regrettable, more than unfortunate incidents that shouldn't have occurred involving women, were context for her decision. That's what I remember Minister King saying in that transcript. She and many other ministers have said repeatedly that the decision was made in the national interest, that there was no one factor. I'm not really sure what we can add to the previous answers that we've given on this point. But what we can add on matters involving airlines, as I've already indicated, is that one airline was held to account today for its behaviour, and it was an airline that had the full support of the former coalition government when it went about outsourcing labour, sacking its workers through the pandemic and treating them with utter disrespect.
Minister Watt.
And
Minister
we know.
Watt, please resume your question. Senator Scarr.
Direct relevance, President.
I will remind the minister of the question. Minister Watt, I'll take you back to the question.
Well, with respect, President, I believe I have largely answered the question in the first part of my answer, and I'm entitled to use the remaining 45 seconds of my answer to remind the coalition about turning its back on Qantas workers through the pandemic.
Senator Birmingham, there's no need to shout it more than once. I saw you on your feet. I was drawing the minister's attention to your point of order.
President, we did have a matter last week where, and it may have been Minister Watt or a different minister, behaved in the same way, which was to say, "I've answered the question, therefore I can talk about anything I want." Correct. As was raised at that stage, President, the point of order, ministers need to be directly relevant. Throughout their question, there has been acknowledgement from the chair they can make glancing references to other factors, but it is not within the standing orders for a minister to say, "I've addressed the question, now I can make whatever points I want." If they've given the answer, or they believe they've given the answer, it's time to sit down.
Thank you, Senator Birmingham, and I appreciate your point of order. And when it was raised last week, I completely agreed with you. I have drawn the minister back to the question. I will remind the minister of the point of order you made. I agreed with it last week. I'm not deviating from the custom, and I remind Minister Watt of the need to be relevant to the question.
Thank you, President. You know how I always obey your rulings and listen very respectfully to them, so I'll do so on this occasion as well. So, as I say, Minister King has made clear the basis of her decision, as have a number of other ministers over the last couple of weeks. But the question does go to the government's decision regarding Qatar Airlines. And I take the opportunity to remind the chamber that when the coalition was in power and Minister McCormack was then the Transport Minister, in fact, just in the last couple of weeks, he said, when I became Deputy Prime Minister and Transport Minister in February 2018, I made a decision to put on hold an application by Qatar Airways. So this concept that it's only a Labor government that has ever done this is absolute rubbish. The coalition
thank you, Minister Watt. The time for answering has expired. Senator Cadell, first supplementary.
Minister, what is the definition for national aviation interest, which was a brand-new term introduced by the Deputy Prime Minister on Sunday?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt.
Senator Cadell, no, what I'm rolling my eyes at is this newborn concern that we have from the coalition about the aviation industry, its workers and its consumers, when they spent 10 years ignoring the interests of workers and consumers in the aviation industry. And all of a sudden, they've discovered that they care about these issues when they have no power to do anything about them. They had 10 years in government to do anything about these issues, completely ignored the issues regarding aviation competition, the rights of aviation workers.
Senator McKenzie, your constant and very loud interjections are disorderly. I've called you to order a number of times. I expect you to come to order. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thanks, President. And as I say, if only at any point in 10 years the coalition had shown any interest in the aviation market in Australia, its competition record, the way it treated consumers, the way it treated its workers, but of course they didn't do anything about that. In fact, they cheered on airline companies, one in particular, when it sacked its workforce, and now when they lose power, that's when they decide to take an interest in
this. Thank you, Minister. Senator Cadell, second supplementary.
Several ministers, including the Prime Minister, have now made 9 mostly conflicting excuses as to why the minister made this decision to prevent Australians from accessing cheaper international airfares, inventing a brand new and now completely undefined term of national aviation interest. What is the real reason the Albanese government is continuing to fail Australian travellers by keeping airfares high and stifling competition?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt. Senator Wong.
There may have been a point of order. There may have been a misspeak, or I may have missed which minister, but I think the senator referred to his decision. I assume he's referring to Minister King's decision, her decision. Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, as I say, and we have said now for 2 straight weeks, Minister King has made very clear that her decision was based on the national interest, and I suspect that was the basis of the decision that Minister McCormack, as he then was, made when in February 2018 he put a hold on an application by Qatar Airways. That's his exact words from a couple of weeks ago. He was honest. At least we had one honest member of the National Party who owned up to the fact that when he was a minister, he made a decision to put on hold an application by Qatar Airways. I haven't seen any calls from the opposition over the last couple of weeks for any of the airlines that currently have the ability, under the law, under the rules, to bring more flights to Australia to actually do so. How about you join in our calls on those other airlines to get more flights into Australia and relieve pressure on prices? But I also take the opportunity to remind the chamber that aviation prices and tickets first went up under the coalition. So again, maybe there wouldn't be an opportunity for you to do something about it when you were there.
The time for answering has expired. Senator David Pocock.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Infrastructure, Transport, Rural, Regional Development and Local Government, Minister Watt. The price of petrol most Australians are paying has been sitting above $2 a litre for weeks. That means many Australian motorists are spending more than $100 a week, potentially more than $5,000 a year on fuel. Adding insult to this cost, the huge expense is paid to multinational oil companies. What is the government doing to make sure Australians don't have to continue paying through the nose for transport?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Pocock. I know you have an interest in electric vehicles. In fact, I think we took a spin around Parliament in one at one point last year, an electric ute, because we are seeing tradies along with many other people in the community, increasingly turn to electric vehicles as a way of relieving their cost of living pressure. And I'm certainly aware that petrol prices are pretty high at the moment, and they are putting pressure on family budgets. So assisting those families who wish to do so move across to electric vehicles is a key policy of the Albanese government. And fortunately, I mean, it's interesting that the people who are piping up, Senator Rennick, Senator Canavan, who are the people who held us back for 10 years? It was characters like them. Because, of course, we've got finally to a point in this country where we have a government that doesn't run around saying that electric vehicles will end the weekend. There are more electric vehicles on the weekend. There's more electric vehicles on the weekdays as well. And this government, as a result, Senator Pocock, has released Australia's first national electric vehicle strategy, delivering on our commitment to provide greater choice for Australians to drive cars that are cleaner and cheaper to run. Again, 10 years in office the coalition had to do something about electric vehicles, but of course all they did was run another scare campaign. It was right up there with their $100 lamb roasts. It was up there with ending the backyard barbecue. Electric vehicles were going to end the weekend. Well, every day when I get out on the roads, I see Teslas, I see other electric vehicles, and occasionally we get to have a weekend. We don't get a lot of weekends in this job, but a lot of Australians do. And the weekend has survived 10 years of the coalition in power, and the weekend has survived electric vehicles as well. So it is good to see the uptake of EVs continuing to increase, with recent figures showing that sales during the first half of this year have already passed the total from all of 2022. That's a good thing, and it shows what can happen when you have a government supporting EVs.
Thank you, Senator Watt. Senator Pocock, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. It's good to hear that you have a strategy. I'm interested in the promise of fuel efficiency standards going into the last election. We're over a year in now. What is the timeline for delivering them? Because that is what will actually deliver for households who can't access electric vehicles through their business.
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Pocock. Minister Bowen, who of course is leading this effort with Minister King, has said that their goal is to release a draft fuel efficiency standards by the end of this year. And I know that they've been meeting with a range of stakeholders on this issue, from the Electric Vehicle Council to the Federated Chamber of Automotive Industries, to ensure that they have heard a full cross-section of views. There are claims that you see being made sort of from around about that kind of area, that fuel efficiency standards will increase the cost of new cars, but yet again they are claims that don't stack up, and they're not supported by the experience in the US or the EU, which have long-standing fuel efficiency standards. What we've seen internationally is that fuel efficiency standards increase electric vehicle supply because they incentivise vehicle manufacturers to provide electric vehicles to our market to avoid penalties. So, as I say, the minister's intention is to release draft fuel efficiency standards by the end of this year, and there'll be some further consultation once that happens.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pocock, second supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister. It's great to hear that there is a timeline. I've heard concern from stakeholders at just how long this is taking. Australia is the only OECD country without these. Russia and Australia are the two that have that mantle. We're not reinventing the wheel here. Why is it taking so long?
Thank you, Senator Pocock. Minister Watt.
Good question, Senator Pocock, and the answer is right over there. Right over there. 10 years of no action on this front. 10 years of running scare campaigns about electric vehicles, about renewables, about backyard barbecues, about lamb roasts, about Whyalla wipeouts, all those scare campaigns, and here's one of the chief offenders.
Minister Watt, order. Senator, order. I've got a senator on her feet. Senator McKenzie.
Direct relevance. Senator Pocock asked a serious question that I would also like the answer to, and this minister continues to blame the opposition.
Senator McKenzie, order. That's a debating point. Order. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. It's stunning that Senator McKenzie, of all people, should get up and ask for an answer on this. I mean, we know that they had 10 years to do something about this, but certain ministers, won't name anyone, were a bit busy with colour-coded spreadsheets for 10 years. Maybe that's what they were putting their time into, rather than fuel efficiency standards.
Minister Watt. Senator Pocock.
Sorry, President. I'd also like to raise direct relevance. I asked about this government, not the former government.
Thank you, Senator. Order. 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 Senator Pocock, your question went to why has it taken so long. The minister is being relevant, but I will remind him that the last couple of sentences he had drifted away from the question, so I'll direct him back to the question. Minister Watt.
Senator Pocock, I would argue that given when we came to office, we inherited zero work on this issue and had to start from scratch, as we did on so many other climate and energy-related issues. The fact that by the end of this calendar year we intend to release a draft fuel efficiency standard is a good outcome. If the former government had done anything on this, it would have been a matter of implementing it, but we've had to start from scratch, and I can assure you it is a priority for this government.
Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Watt. Senator Pratt.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Housing and Homelessness, Senator Farrell. Earlier today, the Senate passed the Housing Australia Future Fund and sent the bill back to the House for consideration. It is a big step towards establishing the Housing Australia Future Fund. Given this significant development, can the Minister please explain what the difference the fund will make to Australians needing a safe and affordable place to call home?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and can I thank Senator Pratt for her question and her deep interest in the issue of housing, particularly as it relates to her home state of Western Australia. I thank her for her ongoing support for the Housing Australia Future Fund, which is now set to pass Parliament this week. This fund will create an ongoing pipeline to help build social and affordable homes right across the country, not just for this term of government, but into perpetuity. And it's supported by the broad and ambitious Albanese government housing reform agenda. We've heard from the experts about how these measures will help, but the most important feedback has been from people whose lives have been changed by safe and secure housing. People like Sean and Lisa, who met with the Minister for Housing recently. Sean had been needing surgery, but doctors couldn't operate while he had nowhere secure to be discharged to. Lisa told us that because they finally had a place to call home in social housing, like the homes this fund will deliver, Sean could finally access the medical care he needed. Access to housing changes lives. The Housing Australia Future Fund will change the lives of countless Australians. That is why our work in this place is all about, and it's what the Albanese government is working for each and every day.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. I know this will be welcome news to all those in WA who've been waiting for the affordable housing the Housing Australia Future Fund will provide. Can the Minister outline some details on how the fund will support Australians who are facing specific challenges to securing a safe and affordable home, or for those who are currently homeless?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Pratt for her first supplementary question. The Housing Australia Future Fund will provide important supports for Australians who face significant challenges to find safe and affordable accommodation. The passage of this legislation allows us to deliver on our commitments, 4,000 homes and $100 million for crisis and transitional housing options for women and children leaving domestic violence and older women at risk of homelessness. $200 million for the repair, the maintenance and the improvement of homes for remote Indigenous communities. $30 million to build housing and fund specialist services for our veterans. This is a significant day for Australians who need and deserve our support and have a safe and affordable place to call home. The $10 billion Housing Australia Future Fund will fundamentally change housing in Australia.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Pratt, second supplementary.
The fund is a great demonstration of the collaborative approach the Albanese government is adopting, as the government has been working in partnership with the states and territories, local government and the not-for-profit sectors to improve housing for Australians. Can the Minister please provide an update to the Senate on how the news of the passage of the government's Housing Australia Future Fund has been received by our valued partners?
Thank you, Senator Pratt. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and once again thank Senator Pratt for her question. And yes, I can give an answer to that question. I also thank the Senator for their respect for the stakeholders who have been so supportive of the Housing Australia Future Fund. Over the last few days, we've heard from them about the difference this legislation will make. As the Master Builders said, the Housing Australia Future Fund legislation is a vital piece of housing puzzle by encouraging investment in the social and community housing sector. And Kate Colvin from Homelessness Australia said, "The homes delivered through the HAF will each make an enormous difference to people who would otherwise be homeless." I want to thank the housing and homelessness sector, the building and the construction sector, and embrace their partnership in the delivery of homes to come from the Housing Australia Future Fund.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Home Affairs, Senator Watt. From the 28th of October 2023, the ACT will decriminalise the possession of small amounts of the most commonly used illicit drugs. This comes after the ACT Health Minister reportedly boasted to a room full of activists at Labor's National Conference about how Canberra's Labor Greens government was able to quietly but quickly decriminalise illicit drugs. Does the federal government support their ACT Labor government colleagues' plan to decriminalise hard drugs, including methamphetamine, heroin and cocaine?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Patterson. Clearly, the question that you're asking is a question for the ACT, over which it has no over which the federal government has no responsibility. So I don't know why we're using the federal parliament to ask questions about a territory government and its decisions. Senator Patterson, I know it's a while since you've been able to ask a question in your portfolio, but I would have thought there are other issues that are clearly within the province of the federal government in Home Affairs that would be something that we clearly have responsibility for. So it's a little odd that the only question we're receiving in the Home Affairs area is something that is the decision of the territory government.
Minister Watt, please resume your seat. Senator Patterson.
On direct relevance, Madam President, two agencies in the Home Affairs portfolio, the Australian Border Force and the Australian Federal Police, have publicly commented about their concerns about this development.
Minister Watt, please continue.
Well, as I say, President, this is a decision that's been made by the ACT government. I know Senator Canavan wanted to have a Senate inquiry and a private senator's bill about another decision that was made by the territory government. What we're focusing on are matters that are decisions of the federal government, including in the Home Affairs portfolio, strengthening our national security. That's what we're focused on, rather than the decisions that territory governments make. Of course, the AFP are entitled to their view, but as I say, our focus when it comes to the Home Affairs portfolio is ensuring our national security is strong, is ensuring that we fix up the complete mess around cybersecurity that was left by the former government. They're the issues that we're really focused on in the Home Affairs portfolio. I know Minister O'Neill has also been working closely with Minister Giles, the Immigration Minister, about the migration review, another issue that was a complete mess when the former government lost office. We've been tackling the backlog of visa applications, which was up to 1 million when we took office. They're the issues that we've been very focused on in the Home Affairs portfolio.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson for supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Perhaps the Minister's getting the answer now from his colleague. What is the government's plan to ensure this loophole isn't exploited by organised crime groups operating across Australia after the Australian Federal Police warned that changes will lure recreational drug users into Canberra and spark an increase in drug-related deaths? What impact will these laws have on other jurisdictions, for example, New South Wales?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Watt.
Well, Thank you, Senator Patterson. Of course, it is important to recognise that the changes the ACT have made have been in relation to small quantities of these substances for personal consumption.
Senator Cash. Senator Cash.
Senator Cash, you're calling someone a disgrace.
Minister Watt.
You are calling someone a disgrace.
Minister Watt, resume your seat. Senator Cash, I request that you withdraw that comment.
I withdraw.
Thank you, Senator Cash, and I would ask that you listen in silence. Minister Watt, please continue.
But the point remains, Senator Patterson, that the issues you're asking questions about relate to decisions that were made by the ACT government. They would be entirely appropriate questions to put to the ACT government. I know the Liberal Party does have a handful of members of the ACT Assembly, and they would be questions best put to the ACT government. We, of course, take advice from our agencies about these matters, but we've got enough to do cleaning up the backlog of visa applications, cleaning up the mess of a migration system, cleaning up the mess of a cyber security system that were all left to us by your government in the Home Affairs portfolio. That's our key focus.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Patterson, second supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. Interesting the minister doesn't think the illegal importation of hard drugs internationally is a matter for the federal government. A spokesman for the Minister for Home Affairs said in response to this issue, state and territory laws are a matter for those state and territories. Is the government abrogating its responsibility for combating illicit drugs impacting our communities?
Thank you, Senator Patterson. Minister Watt.
No, I mean, that is just absurd. Of course we are not abrogating our responsibilities, because our responsibility does relate, as the federal government, to the importation of these drugs from overseas. And we are resourcing the Australian Border Force and other agencies to do that. That is, of course, not what the focus of the ACT legislation is about. To argue that laws made by a territory government relating to personal consumption of drugs are the same as organised crime importing large substances of drugs from overseas, to argue that they're the same thing is complete nonsense. So, as I say, we'll keep focusing on fixing the various messes you left us behind in the Home Affairs portfolio, and we'll leave it to the ACT government to do their bit.
Minister Wong.
President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice, and I seek the leave of the Senate to just make a short statement in relation to Senator Payne.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted.
I thank the Senate. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend Senator Payne's valedictory this afternoon, as I'll be travelling to the Pacific Island Forum Foreign Ministers meeting. When I said this to Senator Payne, she says, "I know how that feels." But I did want to make some brief contributions before I left to place on record my respect for her contribution to this place over the past 26 years. Senator Marise Payne is the longest-serving woman senator in Australian history. That's an extraordinary achievement, and it speaks to Senator Payne's determination and to her fortitude. I think all of us here know how hard it is to earn and retain pre-selection. That was said with some understatement, right? We all know that. We also know what it is to live under intense scrutiny, away from our loved ones and the personal toll it can take. So it speaks to Marise's courage and resilience that for so many years, particularly in the Howard government, she was prepared to stand her ground on issues she cared deeply about, regardless of whether that benefited or did not her personal career advancement. Senator Payne, you will be rightly remembered for maintaining your commitment both to the Liberal Party and to liberalism, particularly at a time when many might have seen those positions as being in conflict. And in doing so, you demonstrated your commitment to your principles. I said in my public statement, after Senator Payne indicated her resignation, that I respected her love of country and her belief in our institutions, particularly the Senate. Along the way, Senator Payne has held senior cabinet roles, human services, women, defence, indeed Australia's first woman defence minister, again another historic achievement, and then of course foreign affairs. There is a special responsibility in this portfolio to put the country above any other interests, and those of us who've had the high privilege and rare privilege of serving as Australia's Foreign Minister, I think are all acutely aware of that. The political environment clamours for binaries of black and white, but Foreign Affairs is a portfolio that requires an ability to chart a course through complexity and ambiguity. I would say that Senator Payne sought to do this, and perhaps even when others took a different tack. This is to her great credit and to our country's benefit. Throughout her parliamentary career, Marise Payne has sought to be a leader for women and girls and to encourage as many women and girls as possible to get involved in politics. I am advised that Senator Payne's retirement makes me the longest current-serving senator. I do not thank her for making me feel old, but I do thank her for her contribution. And on behalf of the government, I congratulate Senator Marise Payne on her 26 years of dedicated service to the people of New South Wales and to this Senate, and I wish you all the very best for your life beyond this place.
Is leave granted? Leave is granted, Senator Payne.
Madam President, I will have, unfortunately for my colleagues, much more to say this afternoon. But may I thank the Leader of the Government in the Senate, Minister Wong, for her thoughtful and generous remarks today. I do appreciate them very much. This is a place overwhelmingly of adversity, but when it is not, it is at its strongest. And in coming into the chamber today before you, like me before you, making yet another trip in support of Australia's interests and those of our partners, I really do appreciate you making that statement, Senator Wong. Thank you very much.
Hear, hear.